Hello and welcome friend. In this tutorial we will look at something called as WSL, Windows Subsystem for Linux. So if you search for WSL, you might see a lot of articles. WSL Windows install Windows Subsystem for Linux. So this is one of the other alternatives for virtual machines. So for virtual machines we need to have extra software like VMware Fusion, VMware Workstation or VirtualBox. And those will take some resources. You will have an operating system, a separate operating system which is called as guest running. It takes some extra resource. Recently, in the past few years, Microsoft has come up with something called as Windows Subsystem for Linux. So within the Windows operating system, you can install Linux. Mind it, when we say we can install Linux, it's not exactly full-blown Linux operating system. What it does is it takes the set of Linux binaries and calls and pass it through the Windows operating system. So underlying operating system is still Windows and the layer on top of it looks like Linux. So you can execute the normal Linux command, whatever the user space commands are there, like ls, pipe, grep. You can do everything or most of it, but you will not be able to do kernel functionality like modifying a kernel, installing a modules, those kind of things, because it's not a Linux kernel. It will go through the Windows subsystem. It's a very good approach. There are some drawbacks and then there are some plus points. The drawbacks being it's little bit slow, and the terminal of the Windows, the default terminal which you use, that's not so good. The console is not so good. In terms of typing or copying pasting, it's little difficult, little hard compared to Mac or maybe even Linux terminal. But it's a good thing in the sense like you don't have to have a putty to log into some remote virtual machines, or if you want to try out something quickly you can do that, but it's not a full-blown Linux operating system. That you will have to remember. So how will you enable WSL? Let's go. So first you open your command prompt and try to do write cmd, which is the console in Linux, the console in Windows, and you say type bash, and you will see the bash would not be available. The bash is not available. So what you need to do, go to your settings, right click, go to your settings. Inside the settings, first you have to search for something called as developer settings. Search for that options and you have to enable developer mode. This is still in beta, even though it's very stable, and I have a lot of respect for Microsoft. Since the time they have introduced WSL, it helps in automations of many of the parts of Windows also, but it's quite good. So you can say select and then turn on the developer options. It will configure and it will take a couple of minutes to do this. Once you're done with this developer options, you have to go to a control panel by command R and type in this window and you say control. So you will go to the control panel of the Windows, go to the programs and features in the control panel and turn Windows features on and off. Once you select turn Windows features on and off, this would be highlighted. And mind it, there is one more option called as Hyper-V. So on Windows 10, this is my Windows 10 operating system. You can enable Hyper-V also by this way. But for Hyper-V, you don't need to have the developer options. You can directly go to control panel, programs and features, and enable Hyper-V. But for Windows Subsystem for Linux, that's called as Windows Subsystem for Linux, you need to have the developer option selected as of now. You select this and it will do a required installation, and it's not a full installation. It will enable your system by enabling some of the components of the Windows to install. Then it will ask you to restart. So let's restart and I'll pause the video. So my system is back from reboot. Now let's see. Previously when we typed the command bash, I didn't saw anything. It says that no commands available like bash. Let's see this time. So now this time it says that you have to go to the Windows App Store to download this Ubuntu. So let's go there for the Windows App Store. You can directly go from here also and you can say App Store and you should be able to see Microsoft Store and you should be able to find out Ubuntu. So you can search for Ubuntu here also, or you can go to the link which it was given for you. Now there are a couple of Ubuntus here. This is the default, this is the latest 20.04, and you also have Kali Linux, so you can explore these options. So let's install this Ubuntu 20.04. Click on get and click on install. Now again it will download some software. So remember, when it rebooted previously, when we selected in the control panel Windows subsystem for Linux, it didn't actually install the Linux component. What it did, it provisioned the Windows, or it activated the Windows subsystem so that Linux can be installed. Once that is being activated, then you are installing the actual Linux. So I hope it will not take much time, but I'll just pause the video for it to complete.